Listen, have you ever wanted a better marriage? Okay. I get it. So what I want to do today in this video is just openly share with you 3 things that I did to improve my marriage, which is pressing upon 18 years in a few months, depending on when this video comes out. All right. And I get this question a lot. And I'm like, why don't I just make a video to talk practically about what my wife and I have done together to force a better marriage. And I say I'm very intentional when I say force because, well, let me ask you this. Have you wanted a better marriage and it hasn't happened? Okay, so you get what I'm saying. You have to literally force it to happen. And when I say that, that means you have to take action. Just hoping for a better marriage, but doing nothing to get there will get you the same marriage that you have. And as I mentioned, right, we're approaching 18 years. And I think back to when we met, I was 17 going on 18 and she was 2 years older than me. So she was 19 going on 20. And at the time when we met, I was out of control. Like I was in the streets. I was looking at a 4 to 10 year felony at 17. Shortly after that, got her pregnant at 18, flunked out of college. Like life was crazy back then. By God's grace, I found Christ and some things started to change in my life. And so I always tell the story currently that my wife and God are the 2 catalysts that I've had in my life for 2 decades that I know have put me in a position that I'm in today, as well as helped me to become the man that I am today, right? And maybe for you, your story isn't my story, but I think what we all share in common is if you've been with your spouse for any significant amount of time, you become different people during those seasons. And this is something that I think is so grossly overlooked. And so the same thing that attracted my wife and I to one another 20-something years ago, some of those things still exist, but that excitement and that infatuation is not the glue that's kept us together and more importantly, helped us to thrive in this season of life now in our 40s. But when you don't take inventory of that, you just start to, and to some degree, resent, not like, become annoyed and disgusted, right, with certain aspects of your spouse, and you don't know why that is. Well, the why that is because hopefully you're evolving and they're evolving. The problem, though, becomes when you aren't evolving at a very similar pace. And so one can be outpacing the other, particularly if it's a situation where the wife becomes a stay-at-home mom, her life then becomes the children, which also her identity then becomes rooted in the children. And so it's interesting because you will see like moms on social media where it's like soccer mom or dog mom or volleyball mom, right? And while that seems innocent enough, you have to be careful and really zoom out and say, hold on, they've lost themselves in whatever the thing it is that they're doing in serving their children. And while that may be healthy for a season, it's dangerous because that season is going to change. Those kids will grow up, right? My wife and I have a 22, well, soon to be 22-year-old. Those kids will grow up. They will stop dancing. They will stop acting, and they will be out of the house. So then what happens to your spouse when that happens? Meanwhile, back at the ranch, you've been slaying corporate giants and becoming a business owner and maybe an entrepreneur. And, you've been evolving in the marketplace or in business while they've been tending to the children, which is a great compliment to you. But then you have to also understand that they're going to go through a phase of really not having a true identity anymore. So what's unique about that is God is no respecter of person. He gives us all unique gifts and talents, and he gives us those for a purpose, right? And so we have to be consciously aware that while the arrangement in the marriage may be that one person is going out to do gargantuan things, that the other person, while they may take the back seat for a specific season, don't mean that that's a life sentence. And so, now I'm just going to talk for a second to the fellas. I highly recommend that you check in with your spouse and find out the things that interest them, find out the things that are important to them. And fellas, I know we can be impatient, right? We think very linear. Sometimes it's hard to pull that information out of them, but I just encourage you to keep asking and get them to think beyond the surface level of the kids. If it's attached to the kids, keep asking, because that little girl inside is something else that she wants to do. It's something else she aspires to be. And even if it don't sound smart to you, I just put it that way, like, let it be, let her sit in that, embrace it, encourage it, and continue to help it to evolve. Because I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen. In the event that you don't do that, and you keep going out here slaying giants and climbing ladders and doing all the stuff that you wanna do, they're gonna resent you because you, quote unquote, left them behind. And while it may not be intentional, the impact and result to how they feel will remain the same. Okay? At the very same time, women, it is important for you constantly check in with yourself. Don't allow yourself to forget about yourself. In the process of serving your husband, in the process of serving those children, that you have to always be consciously aware about, how am I doing? Like taking some quiet time for yourself, disconnect to reconnect, to understand how legitimately are you doing. Because I also seen this to where women, y'all are strong and you don't complain about a whole lot. It may feel that way to the fellas, right? But you really don't. You endure a whole lot and y'all have a high tolerance for pain. And you'll find yourself getting lost in a distraction to keep you from the reality of you're not really living in your purpose or don't feel like it. You're not really utilizing your gifts or don't feel like it. And here's the thing. Life don't always have to be an either or. As a matter of fact, oftentimes it's both and. So yes, you can be a soccer mom and pursue your passion. Maybe not at the maximum capacity that you would like to until those children leave the house, but that doesn't deny you from at least being curious, at least going to start being educated about it, at least going to start and taking some action steps toward it. Nothing's wrong with any of that. But it's important that you check in with yourself and then be real with your spouse. One of the biggest things that we figured out is how critical it is for us to stay on the same page. And I'm about to get in the top 3 things here in a second, but I just wanted to give context and kind of set the stage for this conversation because it's one that's near and dear to me. We've had seasons where we didn't think our marriage was going to make it. Multiple seasons, right? Because like anything else, you need wise counsel in your life. And if you don't have it, then the same level of consciousness that created a problem can't be the same level of consciousness that fixed it. So what happens is you get frustrated with one another because you identified it as something wrong or broken in the marriage. But if you can't articulate and have this vision and foresight that I'm communicating with you now, then you're just even more frustrated because you don't know how to fix it. So guess what that turns into? Arguments, right? Arguments that have no end and that keep reoccurring. And it's the same things. And you end up in this vicious cycle to where you kind of like, well, maybe this just ain't going to work. Right? And so this is why it's so important to me to have this conversation with you, because maybe you're there right now. And I'm going to tell you there's a tremendous amount of hope on the other side of it once you get the right information. Okay? Scripture says that many plans fail because of lack of counsel. We need mentorship in every aspect of our life. Our marriage is no different. Fellas, I know we can be, stubborn. I know we can, feel like we the man of the house and this and that, and I don't need nobody to tell me. But here's the thing. The way God set this thing up called marriage, which is his thing, by the way, right? He developed his covenant. God had a man, man had a woman, right? Submit one to another. Then it says, wives, submit to your husbands. It says, husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church. Well, he died for the church. This is what God told us we supposed to do in marriage. But are we really doing that, though? Because if we are, then that means that we're willing to do whatever we possibly can and bring in whatever resources possible to help us have the healthiest marriage with our helpmeet as we can possibly have. God had a man, man had a woman. Meaning that if you want her to submit to you, then who you submitted to? Hopefully God, because many marriages failing because the men aren't submitted to God. So if you don't have anybody to answer to and you out of order and she submitted to you, then your whole thing in disarray. Which leads me to point number 1. The first thing that really benefited me and my wife was taking an Enneagram test, okay? I don't know how to spell it. It started with an E and it got gram in it. And we're going to probably put it up here on the screen for you. But it's called an Enneagram test. While there's a myriad of personality tests out there, I love this one in particular because it is a believer-based test. And it helps you to identify in your most innate stating, in your most innate state, your most innate being, who God has created you to be. Okay? I'll give you an example. Listen, I promise you, I know you're enjoying the video. I'm gonna let you get right back to it, but I wanted to make sure I gave you an opportunity to join us inside of our Believers in Business community. What is it? So here's the thing. I figured out that at times where I've had financial success, but maybe my faith wasn't in the greatest place. At times, I may have had financial success, but my weight wasn't in the greatest place. Or I may have been struggling with something that I needed freedom from. And so what all of this has taught me is that probably just like yourself, we need this core four to be really solid in our life. Our faith, our fitness, our finances, and ultimately our freedom. And so what I found is that that has been the only thing that's given me true success in life, as so for the people inside of our community. And so I want to extend you an opportunity to join us in the community with aspiring business owners, current business owners who really want to have holistic success in their life in every aspect. And so I want to extend you an opportunity. It's a 14-day free trial. Click the link in the description. And as promised, back to the video. So when we took the Enneagram test, I scored a 99 as a 3 and a 96 as an 8. And you're like, well, what does that mean? I'm about to explain it to you, okay? It's a numbering system. So a 3 is an executor or achiever, as they say, right? And part of being an achiever is obviously that you're an executor. Anybody that knows me know through and through, that's who I am. That's who God has gifted me and wired me and called me to be, a 3, okay? Achiever, which is phenomenal. I scored 99% as an achiever. Now, you know the shadow side of that, though, is when I'm not achieving, I'm depressed. So my wife has to deal with the duality of seeing me at my highest highs, but only momentarily because I'm an achiever. So when I achieve something, I quickly get bored with the accomplishment and I got to go chase something else. The shadow side of that is when I'm not accomplishing those things, then I'm down. The 8 in me that I score 96 as is a challenger, which means that I can't have things or I can't have people around me that are met with adversity and I leave them in that place. I have to challenge those things that I see wrong being done to people that I love and care for, or that I see done wrong, period. And I got to challenge those things. That's my natural innate being, okay? And I promise y'all, this about to get real juicy. Y'all don't even understand what's about to happen when I let y'all behind the curtain on this one. So what happens is these are great qualities. Oh, by the way, but here's where the challenge came in at. Because I'm a challenger by nature, I score a 96. Well, when we took the Enneagram test, guess what we found out? My wife's a 9, which is a peacemaker. So her natural innate wiring by God's grace is to be a peacemaker. So what's problematic with that, though, is the shadow side of a peacemaker is that it can become unhealthy for them to be a peacemaker, so much so that they end up acting as if they're cool with things they're not cool with. And like any other human being, that at some point turns into a boiling point where they've been taking stuff for so long and trying to be their natural state, which is a peacemaker, but they really been agreeing and acquiescing with stuff that they don't identify with. And then when it becomes a problem, oh, they ain't peaceful no more. Let me just tell you that. They far from peaceful, okay? Now, here's the dichotomy in this. My wife's a peacemaker and I'm a challenger. So guess what used to happen in our arguments for 15 years until we went and figured out and somebody defined this to us? That I can ask her a question, and because she's a peacemaker, she processes things. It takes her a long time. I shouldn't say that. Baby, if you're watching this, you know what I mean. She processes things, right? So I ask her a question, she's processing. I take that as if she procrastinating and deferring and don't want to answer my question. For 15 years of our marriage, I'm ignorant to this. And my natural innate wiring is to challenge. So now watch this though. Her reception of my direct aggressive nature is that I'm attacking her. So for 15 years, we walking around having essentially the same argument over and over again, where she feeling attacked and I feel like she procrastinating or lying to me. Until point number 2, we went to counseling. We went and got a marriage coach. And I'm talking about, like, you know how when your marriage in shambles and you like, well, I guess we just gonna go to counseling, right? We did that before. That was like, 1 or 2 sessions, very non-productive, right? Just did it to check the box. Now I'm talking about 1 Corinthians 13:11. When I was a child, I spoke as a child, I thought as a child, I reasoned as a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. Like, this was me saying, I don't like the state of our marriage. Clearly, I lack the wherewithal. As while I may be great and intellectual in many capacities, I can't figure out how to fix my marriage, particularly because I can't figure out how to fix her. And then come to find out it wasn't my job to fix her anyway. You know what I'm saying? So we went in and got a marriage coach. And in doing so, they helped us to distill this information from this Enneagram test. And they showed us how to appreciate each other's dominant as well as shadow side. And once we defined that and we learned to appreciate the dynamic of how God put us together, it's really the perfect complement. I'm very much so a risk taker. My wife is very much so risk adverse. Well, I can tell you, she done saved us a many a time from being risk adverse, not from stopping me from doing the thing I went and did, but her conservative nature has been a rock for us to stand on while I may have went over here and took a loss or something, right? So when I started to really understand the dynamic of how God put us together, I'm like, hold on, this is the best thing that could have happened to me. The fact that she take time to process as opposed to squeeze first, ask questions later, gives me a lot of wise counsel when I submit to her on a myriad of different topics. Even though she's not necessarily participate in the day-to-day of my business, she has a tremendous amount of wisdom for me when I submit, and I use her as a filter on many occasions for that very reason. On the other side, she may be in a state where she's accepting things that she probably shouldn't. And now, instead of her feeling attacked, she finds it encouraging for me to give her my challenger perspective to help move her into a healthier place of her being a peacemaker, but still being assertive about those things that she likes or dislikes. You see what I'm saying? So now, after going to marriage coaching 3 years ago, our marriage is in a better place than it's ever been in result of having some wise counsel speak into our life. And this is the third one. And this is the most difficult of them all. If we want to live like Christ, we have to die to our flesh every single day. Yep. One day I remember I went and talked to the marriage coach by myself. And I could be honest about this now because she on the other side of this. At least I hope I can. If not, y'all got me in trouble. Okay, I'm just letting y'all know that now. But she had gained some weight. Okay, wasn't that thrilled about it. And it was less that my baby bad, period, right? Like, she looked good with the weight on her it wasn't about that. The thing that upset me was I felt like her mentality behind it was if she didn't care about how I felt about it. And I say this to say, because she on the other side of it, she on a whole nother tip. Now she want to be a Pilates instructor. You see what I'm saying? Like, it go from one extreme to the next. But when I went and talked to my marriage coach, he told me, he was like, listen, and this is the other thing. When you find these individuals, like, first of all, be prayerful, right? Because everybody shouldn't have the liberty of speaking into your life. Like, you got to make sure they're the right person, yielded to God, in my opinion, all the rest of it. But when I went to him, he told me that, he said, well, we supposed to live like Christ, right? I said, absolutely. He said, well, let me ask you something. Do you think it was Jesus' preference to come here in the flesh and die on the cross to save us? No, I don't think so. You know what I mean? He said, so what you explaining to me about your wife's current situation is your preference for her. Yeah, that would be a preference. He said, okay. And I'm not saying that you do away with your preferences, because that'd be inhumane. Like, that'll be me just telling you something that's not real, right, to you as a human being. He said, so here's what I recommend. You voice your preference if you so choose to, but you accept whatever her decision is regardless of your preference. Because, again, man is supposed to love their wives as Christ loved the church. Well, he loved the church so much that he died for it. That's pretty unconditional, right? Because your spouse also has certain preferences of you that they just accept. Fellas, I know it's hard to hear, but it's true, okay? And saying all of that, I'm saying this. It's two things that I figured out. One is you can't control nobody. You can't control yourself, much less somebody else, right? And it's a lot of maturation that has to happen inside of a marriage on both parts. The biggest maturation of them all is dying to oneself every day. Every day seeking to serve. Anybody else selfish? Like, I like stuff how I like it, when I like it, how I want it, when I want it, right? Like, I'm that guy. When you understand that God purposely gave you a helpmeet, it's like, and I forget the exact scripture, and I'm paraphrasing, but it basically says, in relationship to how you treat your spouse, like, when you treating your spouse bad, that's the equivalent of treating yourself bad. So you shouldn't do anything to them that you wouldn't do to yourself because you're doing it to yourself. They're your other half. Two becomes one. And I say all that to say, when you realize that and you really embody that and you start living that, your spouse feels that and they reciprocate that. And this is especially important for the fellas, okay? You do understand that we give a woman sperm and she give us a human being in 9 months. You know what I mean? Like a sperm cell that we ain't never seen, she come back with a whole human, which means that if you give her pain, toil, attitude, oh, that thing grows into a human being inside of her. So I'm just telling you, I figured out after 18 years and over 20 being with her, only give her the things that you want her to reproduce with, because she gonna reproduce one way or another. And the reality is, when you serve them at a high level, bro, your life will never be better, because women have this amazing propensity to do a lot of things much better than we can do them. And typically they're the things that we don't like to do. And so when you serve your wife at a high level, she gonna outmatch you with the service. And it's no better harmony in our marriage than when that happens. But that only happens because I had to take the lead and start out with the gestures and going out of my way to do the things that I know that are important to her. And my wife ain't real needy, thank God. She ain't very high maintenance and all that. She take very good care of herself, but I'm just saying in terms of that being my burden, it ain't. And so just me taking time to wash the dishes during the day, oh, I go a tremendous way. Just for me cooking the 3 meals that I know how to cook and, you know, throwing a Impossible Burger on the thing, and she always say she love high seasoning. She really just liked the fact that I just took the accountability to cook, right? So just those types of things that seem easy enough not to do because they're not tapping you on your shoulder and bugging you about it. But if they had to tap you on your shoulder and bug you about it, then does it feel the same if you do it after they do that? Of course it don't. And that's the problem. We always get into the game late. You know what I mean? And then we mad at them and they like, but bro, why I had to tell you to do that though? Been with me 20-some years. You don't know what I like by now? Right? Fellas, y'all gonna have to pay for me to get y'all the rest of this game, all right? Cause you know what I'm saying? Like, I can show y'all the time. I don't wanna let the ladies know all the secrets just in case they watching this. You know what I mean? I gotta give y'all some game on the side. But no, in all seriousness, having a great marriage is through tremendous intentionality. It won't happen just because you want it to. And the first thing is pointing the thumb back at yourself, taking full accountability, and examining your shortfalls. And it's both the fellas and the ladies I'm saying right now. We got to take accountability and inventory over our shortcomings, where we can improve at, and then go find somebody, a qualified professional, to speak into your marriage. Get the Enneagram test done to make sure that you can identify who's who in the relationship and not your idea of who they are, because your idea of who they are has changed depending on how long you've been in this thing. And lastly, never forget that it's not about you. It's about them. If you do those things, it will become more about you. That's the thing that's so tripped out about it. If you make it not about you, it becomes more about you because they'll do more for you. Anyway, I hope this blessed somebody. Please share this with another married couple, a spouse, a friend who going through it, divorce, it does not have to be the case. There's so many steps you can take toward having the thing that you want, but it's going to take some intentionality. You're going to be uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, you will have a better marriage. I'll see y'all in the next one.